Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Namita. On this channel we talk about work life, master's life and everything else in between. Today let's talk about how to get someone to respond to you on a professional network like maybe LinkedIn. I've been meaning to do this video from a very long time, but with the COVID situation there were so many changes in my work life, my personal life, and I've been MIA for like 2 months. I'm sorry, but I'm back. But I'm here today and let's get started. The first thing you need to keep in mind is when you're reaching out to somebody on a professional network, it's not just about having a Q&A session with them. You are trying to build a relationship. You're trying to get somebody to consider you someone who is worth the response. I know it sounds pretty harsh, but it's you who needs the answers. The other person honestly has nothing to gain from this conversation except maybe a little bit of happiness because they're helping somebody. So, given everything, 90% of the conversation depends on how you start it and how you lead it. I think it's really important to treat it more like a relationship than a Q&A transaction. I've found that most people make some mistakes which are universal if you ask me, and I see mostly new undergrads entering a master's life or kids who have never had any work experience. Did I just say kids? I'm like 27. It's not kids, but yeah, but so who are entering the workforce do mainly make most of these mistakes. Also, this video is not about networking, because networking is a whole different aspect. Networking, I'm not even touching the tip of the iceberg at this point. The topic that I'm talking about today, it's about the niceties of it, the finesse of approaching someone to do your networking. Okay, now there are certain questions I ask myself when I'm trying to reach out to somebody on LinkedIn. I'm going to use LinkedIn as an example because I mostly use LinkedIn for pretty much all of my networking approach, trying to meet new people, trying to understand the change, trying to understand an industry, trying to get someone to get a referral for me, everything else, right? Okay, now the first thing to keep in mind is this: the person that you're trying to approach is relevant, that they find whatever question you're asking them is relevant to them. One big example of this is profile reviews. I used to do profile reviews once upon a time. I think until a year ago I used to do profile reviews. I would sit and talk to somebody about their GRE scores, their TOEFL scores, their GPA, their resumes, SOPs, and give my opinion on what universities they should apply to. Safe, moderate, ambiguous, you know the drill. Ambitious. I said ambitious. Oh my god. Okay. I used to give my opinion on it, but now I've stopped doing it. The first thing is because I don't have enough time to do it. The second thing is because I've graduated in May 2019. It's been a whole year. Since the time I have graduated, my own university has made so many changes in the MIS program. I don't consider myself relevant to be giving opinions on other universities, like forget my own, right? So I don't do profile reviews anymore. So if I get a message from somebody asking for a profile review, 90% of the time I'll probably tell them I'm sorry, but no, even if it's MIS. First thing. Second thing, if someone's asking me to compare two universities, right? I have no idea about other universities except what their website tells me. And if I can look it up on the website, that's the only thing I'm going to be able to tell you, because I haven't really lived that life. I went to Texas A&M University, so I can tell you in depth about my experience in my university, but honestly the knowledge I'll have about the other universities is just very superficial. So it beats the purpose of trying to get someone's opinion, someone's idea, and how they live through it, right? So if you're asking me about comparing two universities and one of that is not mine, I won't be able to give you any input at all, any useful input at all. That leads me to my second point. If a question that you're asking them can be Googled and you can find the answer on Quora or there's a million other crowdsourced websites and forums and blogs, if you can find it there, I would suggest equipping yourself with those answers and then asking the follow-up questions to those questions. Let me give you an example. Now, if you were to ask me about how is data analytics in Texas A&M universities, I I would be stumped when I first get the question, because to my knowledge, Mace Business School does not offer a data analytics course in itself. But if you were to ask me, there are this and this data analytics related courses being offered in Mace Business School. Have you taken any of them? What's your opinion? Then I might be able to dig in and tell you how my experience was with data warehousing or advanced databases, or you know what I mean. So make sure that your questions are not something you can already do a simple Google search and find answers to. Alright, that's the second point. Third point, grammar. I have been a really annoying grammar correcting person all my life, simply because it's something that I've seen. It's very common in many people, and mostly girls. I don't know if that is sexist, but I have this one friend who's currently in California. She is my old roommate as well. She corrects my grammar. So sometimes it drives me crazy, but I know she's doing what she's doing for a reason. Why I'm telling you this is the way I perceive a person. 90% of the time entirely depends on their grammar for me. I cannot stand SMS texting language. Yes, there was a time when I did not own a smartphone. I had a basic phone that allowed me 140 characters per message, and I had like 100 messages a day, and I had to make do with it. But ever since the invention of autocorrect, SwiftKey, I don't use texting language anymore. I think the only few people I'm okay with texting language is really my mom and dad, because they're really too cool to use autocorrect. I mean, my mom doesn't care. Half the time she'll message me PL space CALL and I just call her. So when you're approaching someone on a professional network, you want to come across as somebody who's serious, somebody who's paying attention and putting that effort into something, right? So please don't use texting language, and make sure, sorry about that, my apartment faces the roadside, so yeah, that happens, I'm sorry. Okay. Now if you are not sure if your grammar is correct, there is this amazing extension of website also called grammarly.com. Definitely install it in your browser. Make sure that you're using it often, because it gives you very perfect basic grammar checks, and that saves my life so many times, like when I am composing emails and like doing whatever, right? So it's really important that you put across a professional image of yourself. You don't want to come across as somebody who is taking it so lightly that you're texting a stranger, asking them their opinion on your future plans, and you're typing like this. Like, don't do that. All right. Fourth point. Don't type 2 pages full of questions with your entire life summary in the first message. You are approaching a stranger. They don't know you. You probably know them with a little bit of LinkedIn profile or whatever social media profiles they have. You don't want to overwhelm them, you know. The way I do it is, if you're approaching them on LinkedIn, you can just send a very small, very crisp, short message that tells them how you found them or what you found interesting about them. And then once they accept your request, you can go ahead with a pretty bigger paragraph, you know what I mean? Because once the conversation gets going, you will give them all the details anyway, and you truly don't want to overwhelm them with 500 points about your life and ask them one question where they are expected to put together the 500 points and then give you an opinion, right? I'm going to leave a screenshot somewhere on the screen. This guy, he's one of the people. He met me through, he found my Quora, and then he found my YouTube channel, and I've been in touch with him ever since. I really appreciate the way he approaches people, the way he approached me. I asked him if he was okay with me sharing this conversation on this YouTube video, and he's okay with it. I think when I see somebody messaging me like this, I'm impressed. I know what they want. I know they know what they want. And I also know that they know the right way to approach somebody. This already makes me want to help them, because I can see this guy has done the background work. He knows what exactly he's asking, and he is being grateful. Guys, this, if you don't take anything away literally from this video, the one thing I would say is say thank you. This is something I think I don't understand how this gets taught or how we learn this aspect of saying thank you. This is not about waiting until the far end. For example, you're asking me a question, right? And you're waiting for the entire conversation to be over. That works if it's a face-to-face conversation, if it's a one-on-one or we are on a phone call, you know what I mean? But if you're talking on a chat and if you're trying to get to know what you want from me, it's really best that you come across as somebody who is a nice person, right? You don't have to say thank you for every sentence, use it as a punctuation, but be thankful, say thank you after every time you talk to them, after every encounter. I have had so many people for whom I've taken half an hour to 45 minutes of my time to do some research, find them their answers, tell them what they're asking for, give them my opinion, and also provide them some way forward, to make their decisions. And I get left on red. And I'm not a fan of it. And if this person comes back to me 2 months down the lane and tells me, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I was so busy, I have the next question, do you really think you would respond to them? A master's program, a master's degree in the United States is a whole different ballgame. You are entering a country you probably haven't been here before for education. You are going to be doing so many new things. It will be overwhelming at some point. You will need someone's input. You will need people to tell you what to do, how to do, even though you are the one who will do all the final decisions. With so much at stake and you're trying to ask somebody to make such big decisions for you or even ask their help, their opinions, their suggestions when you're making all these decisions, it's only fair that you thank them, because most of the time, as we all know, helping somebody with nothing to gain, it's great on books, but it doesn't work out very well in life. Simply because we all have lives, we all have things going on all the time. I was MIA for a whole 2 months because I had so much going on. I make time to make videos because I love making videos, I love helping people, but you have to also apply this to everybody else that you're approaching, right? We all have lives going on all the time. So please be nice, even if that is something you did not want to hear, even if those answers you got from them are of absolutely no use to you. All you have to do is thank them for their time. I remember when people are nice, I make assumptions. I don't think I'll say assumptions. I will judge somebody or try to evaluate somebody from the way they're talking to me on LinkedIn or their messages to me on Quora, okay? So make sure that you say thank you and that you also keep them updated. Now, for example, if you are asking their opinion on so and so universities and you have finalized on the university that they went to and another university, and then you get into the United States and you start studying in their university, send them a message, tell them you're here, tell them thank you for everything that they did for you, even if it was absolutely useless for you. Or you went to another university, you're in the United States, you're starting schooling, let them know that you chose another university, but thank you for all the help you did for me, right? Or you shelved your master's plan, you've decided to continue staying in India, let them know. It's not like anybody's waiting to get a response from you to hear back how is this person doing, but they will remember you. I always remember specific people who have stayed in touch with me, whether they went to Texas A&M or not, because it's a small world, guys. It's a very small world. You never know who you're going to meet when. So be nice. Now, to summarize, make sure the question is relevant. Make sure it is not something you can easily Google. Make sure that you're being really nice. Make sure your grammar is proper and clean. Make sure you're not writing stories and more stories. And also, when I say nice, it's not about being overtly fake nice. You know what I mean? You just have to be a genuine nice person, right? Just do that. It's as simple as that. I know this video, I'm being very candid about a lot of things because these are the tips I give to my own cousins, to my own siblings, and to my own friends. Because it's simple. You are trying to make another human being care enough to respond to you, right? So keep all these tips in mind. And these are not foolproof. I also don't get everyone to respond to me like all the time. There are so many times I don't get responses. I will say 7 out of 10 times I do, which is pretty great. I mean, if you think about it, I have 7 kind strangers willing to help me. And also remember, people love to help. I love to help. If nothing, I get the happiness that I did something useful for somebody out of it. And most people aren't we all the same? Don't you feed stray dogs? It's not like the stray dogs are doing anything for you. You're just happy to feed a dog, aren't you? It's just basic human tendency. We all love to help. We all love to be able to be useful to somebody. Oh my god, that sentence was so messed up. Okay. Now, please make sure that you understand what I'm telling here and then go forward with it. Try using it a couple times, maybe 3 times, and see if the responses are different from what they have been before. And if not, let me know that as well and I'll be happy to see what else I can do for you. That's pretty much the gist of this video. But before I go, I also want to touch base. You know guys, this whole COVID situation, I have been speaking in such crazy work lingo. It's insane. I need to have a bingo of my own. So when I say I want to touch base, I'm basically saying this. I had some questions online about, is this still the time to pursue the master's degree with COVID going around, with the coronavirus pandemic going about in the world. First of all, I'm hoping all of you are really safe. You, your family, your loved ones, everyone is safe and healthy, and you're being able to practice social distancing and really just stay healthy and make sure that you're adhering to the rules that your government has in place. It's really important that all of us do our bit so everyone else is also healthy in the long run. With that being said, as always, I will tell you this. I would definitely make sure before I take any decisions that I am 100% informed and equipped about the visa status changes or the impact of it on OPT and CPT. No changes have been made as far as I know. You would know by now if there were any changes. This is not even about what happens until you enter the country. I'm not talking about that. You can go get your F1 visa, J1 visa as soon as I guess the embassies open up. Also, I'm pretty sure your universities, if you have already applied and your I-20s were on your way or anything like that, pretty sure they're already keeping you filled in on how they're planning to go ahead with the fall semester or the winter semester, whichever one you are supposed to come in here. But I would rather also ask questions about how this will impact your ability to do an internship or a co-op, because many universities have different rules on what qualifies a student to be able to do an internship or a co-op. Like Texas A&M, my university, my Mace Business School, my course required that I have an X number of credits completed before I could even apply for an CPT, for an internship. Okay, so that would be my concern. I would ask you to definitely make sure of it, because there is a limit on how many classes can be online for international students. But with the COVID situation, I know most of the universities, or pretty much all of the universities, moved all of their courses online, and I'm sure they are factoring in the international students when they do that. But given you're still in India at this point, I would definitely make sure that I have all those answers from a proper source, not somebody on an internet platform telling you their opinion of it. I'm talking about facts that you can get from the immigration services, from student services, from the universities that you were hoping to go to. That would be my 2 cents on it. Other than that, if you're still watching, thank you for watching. Please make sure you subscribe, like and comment. Let me know what other videos you want to look forward to. I think the next week I'll be posting about how to choose the right roommates. It's going to be a very fun video for me, because the roommate situation has literally been, at this point it's a funny story, but I've had enough of it. Before I go further rambling on and on, thank you so much guys. Have a great week ahead and take care. Bye.